Hello and welcome back to the channel. Now, the Nissan Qashqai, it's a car that's traditionally bought by the sort of person who is more interested in PCP rather than BHP. But this is the new one, and we're told by Nissan it's better to drive, it's got a nicer interior, and there's more tech than ever before. So is this car better than the old one, and is it a type of SUV you should be buying? Well, coming up now is exactly what I think of it, but before we dive into that, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Right then, the new Qashqai. Since I last saw this car back in February, where I had a proper look around the car, and you can watch that video by clicking the banner in the top right, Nissan put the Qashqai on sale. And just like the old Qashqai, there are tons of rivals, all competing against each other to take your cash. So this new one has to be just as good value for money and easy to live with as the old one, but also move the game on when it comes to the driving experience, technology and, importantly, desirability. Now, I'm not a fan of small SUVs, I never have been, but I actually happen to quite like the way this car looks. Now, it's quite a clever piece of design because it clearly isn't like the old Nissan Qashqai, what with its slim lights and big grille and 20-inch wheels on this car and huge rear haunches. But at the same time, it clearly is a Qashqai, isn't it? Now, I'm not going to say it looks a bit like a Porsche 911 that sort of evolved over time, but you sort of know what I'm getting at. Now, the Nissan Qashqai has been a monumental success for Nissan. I mean, they launched it in 2007 and pretty much it was the first crossover on sale. It replaced the dreadfully dull Almera and the Primera, and since then loads of small SUVs have arrived on the scene. But despite that, the Qashqai has been a top seller for Nissan. Even last year in 2020, this was still a bestseller. It was the best-selling small crossover, which is quite hard to believe really, because especially over the past 5 years, this car has started to feel a little bit out of its depth, which is why Nissan has pretty much started from a clean sheet of paper with this new third generation car. So, for that reason, it's not just the body that's new, but also underneath. The Qashqai sits on a new platform which is 60 kilograms lighter than the old Qashqais, thanks to aluminium body panels and a composite tailgate. It's also a bit larger than the old car, 35mm longer, 32mm wider and 10mm higher, and it's stiffer, which should help with the handling. It's also all change under the bonnet because Nissan has ditched diesels and won't be offering a trendy plug-in hybrid either. Instead, there are a couple of 1.3 litre mild hybrid petrols with 138 and 156 bhp with 2- and 4-wheel drive, and a version called e-Power which uses a 1.5 litre petrol and an electric motor. The e-Power is essentially a range extender, as the petrol engine doesn't power the wheels, but just the electric motor. Now we've got the 1.3, the 158 with 156 brake horsepower. And yeah, I mean, it's an engine that's being used in a variety of Nissans, Renaults and Mercedes, and it's a perfectly decent engine. I mean, it doesn't sound particularly good, but it's responsive enough. And for this time round, it's also a mild hybrid as well. It's mild in the mildest of sense because there's a tiny little 12-volt starter generator as well, which basically just recoups lost energy when you're braking and assists when you are accelerating. According to Nissan, you get an extra 5 Newton meters of torque, and you're getting the CO2 is improved by 4 grams per kilometre as well. Now, this engine's got quite a strange quirk to it, because when you put your foot on the throttle, you get this sudden gulp of torque and it absolutely fires you down the road. But other than that, like I say, it's a pretty smooth engine. Now, here we've got the automatic gearbox. It's a CVT, and gone are the days of CVTs being really quite dreadful to live with. This one is actually pretty well mated to that engine. You get flappy paddle gearbox as well, but of course, being a CVT, there are no gears. There are fake steps put into the transmission, and again, it works perfectly well. I would bet that 98% of people wouldn't know this is a CVT. You just put it into drive and the car does the rest. Now, Nissan has done a lot of work on the chassis. I mean, it's been engineered in Britain, so in theory it's been tuned to British roads, and it does a pretty good job actually. There's a good amount of turn-in, the chassis feels pretty well tied down. And Nissan have also done a lot of work on the steering to add a bit more feel and a bit more bite. It's still not the best steering system in the world. I think a Seat Ateca is a bit more fun to drive, but compared to the class average, this definitely feels a little bit more fun to drive than the rest of them. Nissan has also done a huge amount of work on refinement. Now, the old Qashqai, the ride quality, well, driving that car with 19-inch wheels was very much like being on a hostess tea trolley being pushed down a flight of stairs. It was absolutely horrendous at points. This time round, Nissan have put 20-inch wheels on this car. We've got the 20s here, and apart from some really bad road surfaces, the ride is not too bad actually. Now, it's only the top spec cars that come with those 20-inch alloys, and to deal with those larger wheels, Nissan fits multi-link rear suspension to improve high-speed handling. It does a good job at keeping the car flat through corners, but unless you really want the look of those 20s, I'd stick with 19-inch wheels. While you do get less sophisticated rear suspension with the small wheels, ride comfort is quite a bit better. It's an awful lot more quiet in here as well. Nissan have put a lot more sound insulation in here, so it tends to glide down the road pretty silently. Not only that, you get a really comfortable driving position. The pedals are well placed. You can get a really good driving position, and the whole car just feels really comfortable. I mean, you could easily do a really long journey in this car and you'd get out feeling not tired at all. Now, it's not just the improvement in ride quality and harshness and refinement levels, it's also the interior. I mean, the interior in this car is an absolutely gargantuan step on from the old car. The old car was just covered in sort of nasty little pieces of plastic, and it seemed to date really quickly. In here, I mean, it's just packed with lots of nice feeling leathers, sort of stitched leathers, lovely soft plastics. The centre console here is nicely designed. The fascia, it's almost got a sort of a Mazda-like quality to it. And one thing I really do like is the heated seats. Now, in the old Qashqai, Nissan had this foible of putting the heated seat button all the way on the centre console here, a completely ludicrous place to put it, but here it is exactly where you'd expect to be, right near the climate control. Now, every single Qashqai, apart from the entry-level Vizia, comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You get an 8-inch touchscreen, a 9-inch touchscreen higher up the range. We've got that here. It works pretty well. It's not the flashiest system in the world to use, but it's fine. And in front of me, I've got a big digital display. Again, the graphics aren't the best, but there is a good amount of configurability on there. You can sort of tune it to the way you like it. So the Nissan Qashqai's got a better interior, it's more fun to drive, it feels more posh, the refinement levels have been moved up a gear, and now I'm coming onto a but. The but is, I think this car is a little bit too over-engineered for the types of people who are going to buy it. Now, Nissan say that 50% of Qashqai sales are going to be conquest. They're going to be people from the class above, and also people who have never considered a Nissan before. And I think they're going to be really impressed with this car. But for the other 50% who are perhaps used to having Qashqais, I almost think this car is a little bit too good for them. Now, I know that sounds absolutely bonkers, but for the types of people who traditionally buy Qashqais, they are interested in low PCPs every single month. As long as the car gets them from A to B, I don't think most people care. But this car is so good, I almost think it's wasted. It's a strange thing to criticise a car for, isn't it? And it is a massive compliment, but I just feel as though it's just slightly too good for its own good. Every Qashqai comes with a list of standard safety kit that's as long as the Bayer tapestry. Things like lane keep assist and adaptive cruise control are thrown in for free, for example, but you'd be wise to stick to the mid-range models for most bang for your buck. Yes, the top spec models are well equipped with things like massaging seats, but they also cost as much as 38 grand. While I've criticised the Qashqai for almost being too good, it's still excellent at the important stuff. The rear doors open at 85 degrees for easier loading, and the boot is large and has a clever floor. It's still a good family SUV, but now it's one with a plush interior and the exterior looks are rather smart too. Is this Qashqai worth buying, and will it remain a top seller? Yes and yes.